It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. This is Tuesday, February 4th, and this is the C block, Charlie block, which means we start this about 7:40. We're running late this morning. It's all John's fault, right, John? All your fault.
It is, of course it is, yes.
I would never push the blame on anybody else. Okay. By the way, I wrote a little note here, and in the A block, if you don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to 97.1, a timestamp at right around 6:20. You'll hear Mark Cox talk about the fact that they were the one that had the scoop, but we got mentioned, and he's not happy about that. So if you want to go listen to that. So I don't.
Yeah, I have the transcript up. I brought it up 20 minutes ago. Yep.
Oh, do you have it? What did he say?
Well, they posted on the podcast just the John Lamping interview.
Yeah.
So Cox must have talked about it before or after the Lamping interview. I've gone through the transcripts, and I don't see any Cox reference to it. Now, they usually only, because, Brad, I listen to the Mark Cox show and listen to the podcast so often, I'm so familiar with how they do this, they generally will just have interview segments. Like if Mark and Kim are just chatting about stuff, they won't put it in podcast form. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
so we might not get a chance to hear it.
But if you
know what I'm saying?
If you got their app, you can rewind it.
I don't have their app. I have a podcast app on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to find it because of the fact that you don't believe what I said about the fact that he wasn't happy. That
I believe he said it. I'm sure you're exaggerating, but I believe he said it. Sure.
Me exaggerate? John, what are you talking about?
Yeah, imagine that. Boy, imagine you exaggerating, Brad.
Okay, lots of things to talk about this morning. Yesterday we had the interesting thing about this is that it's going to be an interesting race. Now, the third guy that you talked about, and I've met him before, I believe, unless he's retired, he's a captain in St. Louis County Police, and he's the captain. Once again, this is a year ago. The reason I know this is because we used to do a podcast for the Wentzville Fire Protection District when it was under the authority of Chief John Schneider, who's moved over to Central County, and we did a podcast on a weekly basis, and one of the guests was Mr. Law, who was a captain in the St. Louis County Police Department. At that point in time, he was over the tactical, the SWAT team, and the air operations, the helicopter operations, and stuff like that. Nice guy. Okay, why did he get $400,000 from the dude in town and country? Explain that to me.
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly why. And I'm sure that's one of the things that other candidates like Mike Elam and Bill Eigel will probably question and will probably make an issue. I'm not sure. I don't know much about it. I mean, again, some folks that know way more about this were texting me about that contribution. And, I mean, I think folks have their theories, but I'm not an expert on this at all. What I do know is that today, Brad, I'm going to do something that is very rare, which is we do it every day. And I'll tell people that they should go listen to John Lamping was on Mark Cox's show. And Mark asked him this morning about Jason Law and about – so John was on there, and according to just the transcript that I was scrolling through, John was talking about Peter Kinder getting elected as state party chair, also talking about Jason Law and the money he's been able to raise. So I haven't been able to listen to it yet, but John Lamping might have been able to give a little more insight into that three-way primary.
Okay, couple things. We wrap it up. We got about 13 minutes to go. Okay, how do you feel? This is totally way off what we're talking about. This is not politics at all. Jason Day, he's a professional golfer. You know who he is?
No.
He's up on the food chain. He's won a couple majors, I believe at least one or two majors. And the big controversy on Sunday was in the tournament he was playing, he was on the golf course in sweats. He had gray sweatpants and a gray sweatshirt on with, I think it was a hoodie, okay? And people go, oh my God, this is horrible. What do you think about that, John?
So first of all, I've never played golf in my life. So period, I've never played golf in my life. And so I'm not an expert on decorum. I would think that, is this a new thing for him, or is this just like a gimmick so the people on radio shows start talking about him?
Well, normally the golfers, if you've ever played golf before, there's certain golf courses you can't get on the course unless you have special, certain attire. Sure. A lot of the upscale golf courses, if you show up in T-shirts and jeans or cutoffs and stuff like that, they won't let you play golf. And there was a time, and this is interesting because I think, wasn't it just Tony's Restaurant? Didn't they just close last week? Wasn't it Friday? Last day?
Yeah, I think so. You're right.
There was a time there were several restaurants in St. Louis where if you showed up up as a man and you didn't have a suit jacket on, they had a closet where they would give you a suit jacket.
They would loan you a coat.
Right,
yeah.
because you couldn't be in the dining room without a suit jacket.
Which is nice, yeah.
Okay, is this, once again, sort of the Southwest Spirit Airlines of the world, how we're getting to the point where Spirit, remember we talked about that a couple weeks ago, Spirit actually has now a dress code where women cannot show cleavage.
Yeah, which, based on the case, might or might not be a good thing.
Right. Is this to a point where we're breaking down another bastion of, we have to be properly attired on the golf course. We can't be in sweats and a hoodie, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so, I mean, my whole thing is I don't have enough knowledge or domain over golf. I would generally think that it's kind of a John Fetterman thing, where it's like John Fetterman shows up to an inauguration or some sort of event wearing shorts. It's like, put a pair of pants on. Unless it's a marketing gimmick in which you're maybe the whole thing. What's his name? Jason what?
His name is Jason Day.
Unless Jason Day is trying to work out a contract with Gildan or with some other sort of athletic or generic apparel maker,
right,
then it would make sense, But otherwise, like, I don't know, like and most of it is just showing respect. Let me do a brief divergence here, Brad. When I worked I'll make my monthly Monsanto reference. When I worked at Monsanto, I worked in the corporate headquarters building, which is called A Building. We had like 30 buildings on campus. So I worked in A Building. Our executives were on the 3rd floor. I was on the 2nd floor. Out of respect to the office that I worked in, I wore a dress shirt every day, and on Fridays we'd wear jeans, right? Excuse me. I had coworkers who throughout the week would wear jeans, or they were guys and they would wear Converse. Like, I wore a dress shirt and, dress pants out of respect to the building I was in. Now, if I worked in Chesterfield, where we have greenhouses, where we have mostly scientists, I would have worn jeans every day because that's the culture. So look at the culture where you are, and you do it out of respect to them. You don't do it out of, oh, look, I'm going to be wacky. I'm going to wear jeans every day. I'm going to be a iconoclast. I'm going to be a disruptor. Be quiet. Show respect to the culture you're in. I didn't want to wear a dress shirt every day, Brad, but I did it out of respect to the building. You get what I'm saying?
I heard a guy once upon a time, I've heard this several times since, he says, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want.
Yeah, it's long time common, and that's common sense, Brad.
And I always thought that was an interesting comment. Okay, changing subjects again. Here's a good one for you. Governor of New Jersey, Phil, what's his name? Phil, you know what his name is?
D's Nuts. No. Mr. D's Nuts. Yeah, Governor D's Nuts.
No, Phil Murphy, okay? A New Jersey governor, and to me this is so funny. He says, I'm not going to turn in the illegal immigrants. Matter of fact, we have one living at our house. Have you heard?
Oh, wow.
Matter of fact, here's the story. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy appeared to suggest that he was housing a migrant in his home and dared the Trump administration to do something about it. He says, this is it. He says, Tammy, that's his wife, and I were talking about, I don't want to get into too much detail, but there is someone in our broader universe whose immigration status is not yet at the point they are trying to get to it. And we said, you know what? Let's have her live at our house above our garage. Now, here's the thing that gets me. Okay, you can imagine he's the governor of New Jersey, and I guess he doesn't have the governor's mansion. Maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he lives in his own personal house. Isn't it to the point where if you said, yeah, we've got this illegal lives with us, and she lives above our garage, isn't that in itself demeaning? I mean,
yeah, like you might as well put her on a doghouse.
Right. It's like, oh, she lives above the garage. Now,
Yeah, it's not insulated, but she lives there.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, dude, if you're really going to, walk the walk and talk the talk, give her the master bedroom and you and your wife stay in the garage.
Yeah, and he can put up a little cot. He can sleep on the floor. Now, Brad, the real question is, that I hope we get an answer to someday, is how hot is this girl that he invited to live in his house?
Okay, more of a quote for him. He says, and good luck to the feds coming to try to get her, Murphy added, seemingly hinting the person may be an illegal immigrant. And the story goes on to talk about that. A source close to the governor later told Fox News Digital, no one actually moved into his house, so not for a month, not for a week, not for an hour, not for a day. So they're claiming there's nobody there. The source added, he was just talking about someone in his broader orbit who was on the edge over the broader climate and was concerned. He mentioned not even to the person, he mentioned to someone else that they could move in if they want to. So I think that's where some of this misunderstanding was. He's claiming that they're living in his house. There's a source that says, it's just all window dressing. He's just saying that to be, what's the term you use all the time?
Obstreperous, performative.
Performative, right? Performative.
Yeah, but can't you see that? Can't you see him talking tough and being like, yeah, guess what? We got one living above the garage. What are you going to do about it? Come and take it.
Okay. If I were Donald Trump, and once again, Donald Trump, had the FBI raid his house in Mar-a-Lago. They went through his wife's underwear drawer. Remember that whole thing where she got all mad because of the fact that they went through her closet and went through her underwear drawer and the whole bit. If I were Donald Trump, I would, he's got one button on his desk that is the Diet Coke button. This crazy story about he has the Diet Coke.
Yeah, I do know that.
Okay,
yeah.
Then there should be another button that should be the PBMF button. And if you know what I'm talking about, PBMF, think about it for a minute. And he hits the PBMF button, and someone comes in and says, "Yes, sir." And he says, "Hey, those ICE guys, go over and raid the governor of New Jersey's house."
Do you think, Brad, if I suggested publicly on this show today that I was housing an illegal immigrant, do you think Donald Trump might send Kristi Noem to my house?
You would only wish.
Kristi, I have so many aliens living in my house.
Yeah, but the problem with that is, do you have any pets at your house, John?
I don't. No.
Oh, good. Well, she might show up and go, "That dog is not behaving." Boom, boom, boom. We'll take care of that dog. Okay, last thing to talk about, and how the mighty have fallen. And I once again, I find this fascinating. The Stacey Abrams group, she's got this PAC that she started down.
Yeah, this whole it's a scam, right?
Well, okay. Let me read you the first paragraph of this story. A not-for-profit voter engagement group founded by high-profile Georgia perennial candidate Stacey Abrams reportedly suffered dozens of layoffs 2 weeks after facing a six-figure state ethics fine for campaign finance violations. John and I have talked several times about, in the state of Missouri, MEMC. I believe all the states have a similar kind of organization, correct? Where they have...
Yeah, the MEC. And in Missouri, it's the MEC, yep.
Right. And in Georgia, and Stacey Abrams' organization that she founded got nailed, what was it, like $300,000 fine or something like that?
The largest ever in Georgia
the largest ever. Once again, she's the person who's pointing fingers at Trump about running illegal campaigns, and yet, guess what? She gets nailed for running an illegal campaign. Scores of the workers of the New Georgia Project, NGP, have been laid off since December 27th, with a dozen more being pink-slipped at the end of January, which was Friday. The group describes itself as a, quote, nonpartisan effort to register, civically engage, and build power with the New Georgia majority, the growing population of black, brown, young, and other historically marginalized voters. It received attention for helping Democrats flip Georgia in 2020, when Republicans lost both the presidency and its 2 Senate seats within months of each other. Okay, and it goes on to talk about, however, they set up a GoFundMe fund for affected employees. And I'm going like, okay, doesn't this make Stacey Abrams look like the ultimate con person?
Yeah, of course it does. But Brad, how many times have we seen this model replicated around the country? So you could call it a pandemic lunch fund in St. Louis City, and then you go buy a luxury home in St. Charles County. You could call it St. Louis Development Corporation. Like, there's always going to be an angle for you to make a little cash, whether it's private contributions, like through campaigns, or public money. Like, there's always going to be an angle for a little bit of grift.
Okay, John, can you make note of something?
Absolutely. I got a pen right here, Brad.
Okay, yesterday we started on this thing with KDHX. We were in the C block yesterday, the Charlie block yesterday, and about 5 minutes into it, Mike Elam called. Because remember the
audacity of Mike Elam to return your phone call.
Remember the chain of events? We talked to Bill Eigel at 7:20, and then immediately afterwards we said, well, let's call Mike Elam. And every time I grab my phone, John cringes. Oh, here he goes again.
And I'm wrong more often than I'm right, Brad. You're right more often than you're wrong about that.
So we got Mike Elam's voicemail, and I left him a message, and he called back in the B block, or in the C block, probably about 7:50 or so, and I did not finish my KDHX story. Okay, can you make a note that we need to devote at least the first 5 or 6 minutes to B Block tomorrow to talk about this KDHX story?
Absolutely. I don't think most people know that you've officially purchased it and changed it. You're doing a joint venture with KFUO,
Right,
and you're calling it Christian Hippie Radio.
right. We're going to play Johann Sebastian Bach because he was the ultimate hippie, and we're going to play his chamber music all day long. But see, I keep saying once again too many times. I critique myself in the show. I listen to it back and then I'd say it's in my old program director. It's a crutch. I crutch on that phrase, and I shouldn't do that anymore. Though, so what's so frustrating to me is, and I think this is sort of interesting because you see what's going on with the USAID, the USAID thing, where the government, it's this quasi-governmental agency.
Oh, Brad, I cringe. I know so many people at my old job that their livelihood was dependent on USAID. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, USAID grants a lot of money to non-governmental organizations, other than NGOs, if you have a project that you could justify, hey, we're going to feed the world, get in line for USAID money.
But these were Monsanto people?
Well, I mean, we funded a lot of projects. We did a lot of, like personally, this is public. It's not anything proprietary, but I worked on projects that were for the greater good, Brad. And we collaborated with a lot of NGO partners, including we had a lot of data from USAID. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to flex or anything here, Brad, but a lot of the projects I worked on were USAID involved. Yeah.
So should I ask you thumbs up or thumbs down on USAID as far as John Combest is concerned?
Brad, I can't say I wasn't the relationship owner. Let me say that. Like, I wasn't the person that dealt directly with USAID. Brad, I'm just a comms guy. I'm just on the second floor of A Building. You know what I mean?
Well, after dealing with a lot of not-for-profits, the more I deal with them, the more I think to myself, these people are scam artists. I'm sorry. I come out and say it. I just think
the groups are sorry to interrupt, but the groups are, you talked about it yesterday eloquently, Brad. The groups are self-perpetuating.
Yes.
And so the point of a nonprofit, besides all the great stuff it's supposed to do, is how can we get bigger to hire more people, to raise more money, to hire more people, to get more grants, to hire more people?
Well, it's like my classic example I use is March of Dimes. Okay, years ago, this is when we were still in Washmo, there was a local insurance guy who was a big wig around town in Washmo. And he came in the station one day and he wants me to help him with this campaign. He's like campaign manager, publicity manager for the March of Dimes campaign in Franklin County. So it comes in and I said to him, I swear this is a true story. I said, okay, I know what the March of Dimes was about. I know the history. And the interesting thing was he didn't really understand what the March of Dimes was about.
With FDR, he didn't know about it?
No, he did not know about that, which was sort of funny. And to the point where I go, what exactly does March of Dimes do right now? Because it's sort of like,
it's like being a typewriter repair specialist. What do you really do?
It's sort of like being the fundraiser for the anti-polio campaign, where it's like,
yeah, really. And so, but they've evolved, right? Like, don't they give money to other causes or something now?
Well, but he says they help babies. And that's what he said to me.
Oh, wow. Now, what did you point out, Brad? I know we're over time here, but did you point out that the greatest legacy of March of Dimes as it relates to you is you actually inherited FDR's lower body? Like, that's why you walk kind of funny. That's why you have your hip and your leg issues, because FDR graciously said, please give this to a man whose lower body operations and joints are worse than mine.
No,
and you know what? Eventually you got the transplant.
The reason I walk that way is because I had my butt kicked too many times in my life. That's my problem right there. Okay, tomorrow, B Block, KDHX, because there's a part of this story that, to me, when I read this, literally, I was sitting on a chair. I almost fell off my chair because I thought to myself, I can't believe this. I read it and I thought to myself, this is just, and it's on St. Louis Public Radio. So if you want to read the story, have you read this story?
I'm going to go check it out right after I get in my car and I listen to Dial a Prayer on KFUO. You know, Brad, that's 104.5 FM.
You know what, John? You know what's great about this show?
What's that?
There are times when you and I, we just don't give a crap and we just say whatever's on our mind, right? You know what I'm saying?
We don't give a KRAP, Brad.
Yeah, we don't give a crap. Okay.
I'll see you on Hump Day, Brad.
Bye, John.